Hey guys, here's the long-awaited video comparing Washington University in St. Louis and Northwestern University. I'm going to run through the pros and cons for each school in my mind, compare them on a set of criteria, and then explain why I chose WashU at the end. I know I'm wearing the wrong shirt, but that's what I got for now. So we're going to start with pros and cons, and we're just going to go straight down the list. We're going to start with WashU. Great food, great housing, beautiful campus. The main building with the two I guess towers that you see in all the pictures was one of the administrative buildings for the 1904 World's Fair, which was held in St. Louis. So that's super cool. Phenomenal advisory system, both career counseling and academic advisory systems. You have something like 10 advisors in your time at WashU, so it's really hard to slip through the cracks when you have that many people looking out for you. So that's a super nice thing, and it makes, all your questions are answered when you need them to be. The Del Mar Loop is sort of like the little mini downtown, I guess. It's not downtown St. Louis. It's isolated. It's like a 5-minute walk from WashU's campus, and that's basically a street or two of restaurants, and there's a movie theater and just all kinds of nice stuff. Good place to hang out. WashU is very prestigious. Name recognition is not phenomenal among just the general public, but as far as graduate schools and employers, most of them are going to be very familiar with WashU's education, the quality of education you'll be getting there. There isn't, I hesitate to say this, but I'm going to say there's not quite as much competition for some of the opportunities you're going to find in St. Louis, at least compared to Northwestern, where you're in a huge city with a lot of people, a lot more opportunities, but inherently a lot of competition because you're competing with DePaul and UChicago and a lot of other phenomenal schools that are in Chicago area. Whereas with WashU, you're competing with St. Louis University and then some others that are just not quite on WashU's academic tier. So that's not really the best example to give, but I did want to throw that out there. At least in my mind, that's how I see it. Weather in St. Louis is pretty decent. I live in northern Ohio. We're pretty close to Lake Erie here, so the weather here kind of sucks. Chicago weather kind of sucks too. So St. Louis is kind of an upgrade. Although I imagine that a lot of people who live in St. Louis and who are from other warmer parts of the country might disagree with that. Next is the South 40 residential community, which is where all freshmen and sophomores live on WashU's campus. It's like its own little contained community, really. They've got restaurants there, they have a rec center there, and the dorms, like I said earlier, are phenomenal. Just very good for building the sense of community that you might not find on other college campuses. Next, there's a kitchen and a laundry room and a tech center in every dorm, which is super nice. Probably not going to be doing a lot of cooking your freshman and sophomore years, but it's there, and you can do laundry and print stuff, whatever you need to do in your dorm instead of having to go somewhere else. So that's pretty cool. WashU is not too stressful. Inherently, it's going to be, it's going to be difficult. WashU offers a very high quality of education, so you're not just going to sail through there without studying. There's going to be some stress, but it's not like crazy high stress. At least that's the vibe I get from talking with current students and from having visited campus a couple of times now. It doesn't seem ridiculously stressful. It seems if you are capable of managing time well, which you probably are if you are considering schools on this tier, you're probably going to be fine. WashU has a reputation for handling like mental health things very well. A lot of college students end up depressed or struggling with various things, as is the nature of leaving home and living by yourself for the first time for most kids. WashU is pretty good at handling stuff like that. Not to say that other schools aren't, but that's just what I've heard. Greek life, not a huge deal at WashU's campus. If you don't want to get involved, you don't have to, and Greek life does not dominate the social life on WashU's campus. Personally, I don't expect that I'll be getting involved with it, but there's always the chance. So good to have the option, but not have to engage with it if you don't want to. And the last really big thing for WashU on the pros list is Forest Park. It's this great big open space they have right next to WashU's campus, and you can go there, walk, throw on a frisbee. There's like a 6-mile round trip bike trail, pretty much whatever you want to do, so that's nice to have that open space right there. Cons for WashU, first one has to be St. Louis. It's not a bad city by any means, but you're not going to find the same opportunities that you'd have in New York or Chicago, which I think goes without saying, but I figure I should mention that. There's this reputation that WashU has a bubble, that all the students kind of live in a bubble. you know, WashU is a very wealthy school, and a lot of the students come from very wealthy backgrounds, so that's kind of bound to happen, especially since WashU is very much isolated from the downtown and the poorer areas of St. Louis. There's a lot of community outreach that goes on that the university participates in, which is a good thing, but there is sort of that bubble. Name recognition is a major issue for WashU. As I'd mentioned earlier, amongst employers and graduate schools, they're going to have heard of WashU and they're going to be familiar with the quality of education, but among the general public, a lot of people haven't, and it's honestly the worst thing about WashU is having to say Washington University in St. Louis every time, because if you say WashU, most people look at you and say, what? Athletics. Not a huge one for me personally, but definitely a big issue for a lot of people. WashU is a D3 school, one of the best D3 schools in the country, and they win a lot of national championships, so that's pretty nice, but D3 nonetheless. So if you're looking for a Big Ten kind of sports atmosphere, WashU is probably not the place you'd be interested in. And finally, and this kind of ties in with the D3 deal, I haven't seen this firsthand personally, but I haven't been to campus yet. It is mentioned that there is a pitfall as far as school spirit goes on WashU's campus. At schools like Northwestern and Ohio State, you're going to rally around the teams. Those are, Big Ten D1 schools, whereas WashU D3, not so many kids coming out to athletic events to support the teams and stuff like that. So as far as like sports go, a little less school spirit. Okay, now we're going to run through Northwestern's pros and cons list. We'll start with the pros. Northwestern is very prestigious, very well known, really good name recognition amongst the general public. And again, employers, graduate schools are all going to be very familiar with Northwestern, but just overall, a somewhat more prestigious institution than WashU. Evanston is an amazing setting. Definitely comparable to the Del Mar Loop, but I would say with a little more diversity. There's all kinds of different restaurants and such in Evanston. Great place to just walk around and very much a safe neighborhood. Northwestern's rec center is phenomenal. I had the chance to visit when I visited campus for Admitted Students Day, and it's great. Tremendous pool, tons of machines for workouts and stuff. Just overall phenomenal rec center. D1 sports, Northwestern is a Big Ten school, and I believe the only private school in the Big Ten Conference. So lots of school spirit, lots of supporting the purple, things of that nature. So good school spirit, good sports. Not the best sports teams in the country, but the spirit is there nonetheless, so it's got to be fun. Chicago, that's really one of the big ones. Northwestern's is definitely placed out of the city. It's like a 20-25 minute commute into the city, but once you're there, you've got Lakeshore Drive, you've got everything Chicago has to offer, and it's hard to beat Chicago. As far as food goes and dorms go, I would say Northwestern's pretty good. It's not phenomenal, but it's by no means bad. They're putting in some new dorms, and the quality of dorms does seem to differ. But as far as food goes, there's food in most of the dorms, and the dorm quality seems pretty alright. Laundry is free at Northwestern. It's not free at WashU, so that's probably not really a big deal, but Northwestern wins in that department. Lake Michigan, great place to hang out in the warmer months, or depending on the Chicago winter, warmer weeks, but nonetheless cool to have. And Greek life at Northwestern is also pretty manageable. Doesn't dominate the social sphere to any tremendous extent. You don't have to get involved if you don't want to, but the opportunity is certainly there. Okay, cons for Northwestern. It's cold. Chicago is freezing. Freezing. I lived in a suburb of Chicago for 5 years, so I'm very much familiar with the weather, and I despise cold weather, so that was definitely a point of contention for me. If you absolutely cannot stand the cold, Northwestern is not the school for you. Northwestern's campus is pretty big, which leads to things kind of being scattered. So on occasion, you may have a class that's like a 20-minute walk, which may not seem, so horrible, but when it's like 2 degrees outside at 8 o'clock in the morning, not that that probably happens to most kids, but yeah. Northwestern is very competitive and definitely a stressful environment. I would say more so than WashU, probably not a whole lot more stressful, but when you're dealing again with academics on that tier, there is bound to be some level of stress to deal with. Chicago is an expensive city. It is not cheap. Evanston is not cheap. So if you're going off campus to eat or shop, lots of opportunities for it, but be prepared to open up your checkbook. The vibe I got from speaking with NU students, including my mother, who is an NU alumni, said a lot of people don't really go into the city. You might go into the city like 6 times a year, and that's kind of it. Okay, that's it for pros and cons. So now I've got a list of about 20 different categories, and I'm just gonna run right down the line and say which school is better in each one, at least in my view. Overall education quality, Northwestern wins that one. Just slightly better academics. Political science specifically, which is what I'm studying, that's gonna be WashU, just based on the professors they have and some of the rankings, which I know are kind of arbitrary. But I'm gonna say WashU edges out Northwestern by that much in political science. Campus quality, WashU's got to have it. Phenomenal campus, great tight-knit community, great rec centers, great access to food, great dorms. Just WashU has to win for campus. Surrounding area, Northwestern wins. Evanston is nicer than the surrounding area of WashU. Del Mar Loop is definitely still nice. In my opinion, Evanston is just a bit of a nicer setting. City, also Northwestern. Chicago beats St. Louis any day of the week. That's just the nature of the beast. Food, WashU wins. WashU is consistently ranked as having like top 5 food in the country. Really good food, a lot of options, good stuff. Dorms and housing and that kind of deal. WashU wins for that too. They have both traditional and modern dorms that you can choose from. Everything is for the most part pretty new, and they are still building some new dorms, I believe. Just overall dorm quality at WashU is it beats out Northwestern. It's just more comfortable. Extracurricular opportunities for students, I'm going to say that's kind of a tie. There's a lot of phenomenal student organizations at both, and it seems pretty easy to get involved. As far as outside things, both schools attract some pretty nice speakers. WashU has hosted several presidential debates now, and Northwestern has had its own share of interesting similar events. Both schools attract concerts, so that kind of thing. Students, no preference. I met great people at both schools. That's not going to be a deciding factor. Prestige and name recognition, Northwestern wins hands down. They're both really good schools, but as far as name recognition goes, Northwestern wins. Internships have to go with Northwestern. Bigger city presents more opportunities. Overall quality of life for students have to go with WashU. That kind of falls into the food, the dorms, the campus quality. So overall, I have to say WashU. Not to say that Northwestern students have bad quality of life, because they definitely don't. But just the vibe I got was that WashU is a little nicer. Branding, Northwestern. Northwestern does a much better job of showing itself off. Weather, WashU wins. It's farther south, it's nicer, it does not snow 13 months of the year. Northwestern's just cold. And if you like the cold, then that's not an issue, but I personally didn't. And that's not to say that St. Louis is like a great city for weather. There's a lot of ice storms in the winter, so that's not good. But overall, yeah, St. Louis. Safety, I'm going to say no preference. Both of them are removed from the less savory neighborhoods that exist in both St. Louis and Chicago. And campus police in both cases are very alert. Both have blue light systems, and so there's not really an issue there. Athletics, Northwestern wins by a landslide. D1, Big Ten, great teams. Not best in the nation, but good. Whereas WashU is D3, which kind of contributes to the lack of school spirit. Very good at being D3. They win a lot, but D3 is different than D1, no matter how you put it. Finally, cost and financial aid. Cost, just sticker price is a little better at WashU. It's a couple $1,000s cheaper. As far as financial aid goes, Northwestern has to win with financial aid. They do have the higher sticker price, but they seem to do a better job of giving financial aid to students. So the reason I chose WashU over Northwestern, it was a really tough choice. I spent well over a month thinking about it. Those are my top 2 schools. And I visited both, and I ended up choosing on like April 29th, so like 2 days before the deadline. And the thought process I went through was that Northwestern was more prestigious, which was a big deal, but that WashU offered a better quality of life, which was also a big deal. And ultimately, the feeling I got was that I was going to be happier at WashU, just overall. The environment, just for me personally, was right for me. It's hard to judge, if one school is really better than the other. And the short answer to that question is it kind of depends what you're looking for in a school. For me personally, what I was looking for, I found at WashU. And the thing that actually just kind of was like made me choose, I was at a Quiz Bowl tournament in Chicago. And we had a question about WashU, and I got it. I would have been ashamed if I hadn't. And I said, you know what? We're going to go there. So that's what I did, and went upstairs and submitted my enrollment deposit. So that was good. Made my decision. If anyone has any questions, please feel free to ask in the comments. I'm happy to answer any questions anyone has. And obviously, use this video as reference, but judge for yourself. Don't take my word for it. They're both great schools. I would have been happy at either one. I just made the choice I did for some personal reasons. Thank you guys so much for watching. I really appreciate it. I just hit 1,000 subscribers this morning, so that's pretty exciting for me. Definitely planning to keep making these videos, especially when I get to WashU next year. A lot of videos about my experiences there and stuff, so that'll be cool. All right, see you guys. Thanks.